Actual real working class. Joel, you're like squealing out. You don't let me get a word in. Holy shit. You got to tame yourself. Actual working class jobs of the actual working class produce everything about a society. They ensure a society exists. They feed everybody. They put the clothes that they fucking wear. Everything that's produced, all of the roads, all of the buildings, everything that keeps a society going and keeps it running is done by the workers. So if some foreigners are coming and they're doing that in the same capacity as workers within the country, you may be against the immigration. By the way, I don't advocate mass immigration, although I don't fucking care about race purity. I still don't advocate for it because I know it's a tool to stoke racial tensions, to stoke ethnic tensions, to divide the workers. I don't want the workers to be divided. I want them to be united. But now that all these cultural differences are here, now that you have all those foreigners there in Australia, this is the situation that you're in. The bare minimum you could do is just defend a united working class politics. Don't exclude anyone arbitrarily based on their race. And look, inevitably speaking, if some of these Indians who are coming just to work in the IT sector and do all these BS jobs to leech off of Australia get caught in the crossfire, liberals might point at you and call you racist, but you will not. Why would you play into your hands and be like, yes, we are racist? Why not defend the integrity and the honor of the cause of the working class and not get into these traps? Because why do you think they focus? You're saying white people are under attack and are persecuted. Why do you think all of this stuff critiquing white normativity or whatever is becoming widespread? Because they're trying to divide the workers. They're trying to divide the people so that the only avenue of resentment and dissatisfaction by white workers is exactly the type of racist politics you're talking about. It's a trap. It's not going to get Australia its sovereignty. It's strategically not viable, even pragmatically. Listen, even pragmatically, ideologically, you don't have to give a fuck. You can, in your heart of hearts, still be an actual racist who hates all of these racists. You can have that in your heart of hearts. But let's live in the real world. Pragmatically, if you divide Australia racially, you are giving the capitalist class a free base of support in the form of these non-white people who they're going to use as their soldiers to fight against the Australian mainly white working class. And you gave that to them for free. Why would you give your enemies a free army? How is that strategically a viable thing to be doing?
That's why the capitalists brought them in the first place. Didn't we just talk about Australian history? We had a white working class that was actually exercising a degree of political power and sovereignty, and then they smashed up.
Now you're in this new situation.
And brought in a whole bunch of non-white.
Right, so how are you going to? How are you going to deal with the situation?
Identify them as allies now of the current.
Because this is the situation you're in now. Because for better or for worse,
and so I'm just reacting
for
to that.
Better,
playing into the cap.
For better,
when someone throws a punch at you, you throw a punch back. You don't try and argue.
you don't fucking play into their hands by reacting how they want you to. That's not what you do. And by the way, Joel, for better or for listen,
your enemy wins. This is just stupid.
For better,
it's just fucking retarded.
Well, it's the Christian way.
I'm being
for better or for worse.
Listen, for being a white man. So I'm saying, hey, how about we all get together and fucking punch
Joel,
back?
do you want to know why?
Logical.
You want to know why Jesus says Hold on, let me explain something to you about Christianity.
You can't handle it. You have to have.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know?
On it because you're not a white person. You live in America.
That's fine.
You need this
Listen,
ideology to
do you want to know?
Existential
Joel, let me teach you about the
in.
foundation of the West, which is Christianity. Do you want to know why Jesus said turn the other cheek? It's not because he was a hippie. It's not because he believed that in the face of persecution, you should just let your enemies roll over you. He was trying to say, don't fall into the frame and the trap by which your enemy is trying to cast you. Don't fight on their terms. If you're truly going to overthrow this ruling class, you are on a high ground. You're proposing something better than them. You're outmoding them. You're rendering them superfluous. You don't need to fight on their terms. You're fighting on your terms. You are proposing your own rules of engagement, your own terms with which to fight. That's how you actually win, because think about it. What are you going to do? You're just going to replace the current LGBT globalist ruling class with a one that signals for these nebulous-based red pill causes, and it's the same thing structurally. You have to take accountability and responsibility for why you have the ruling class you do. You have to take responsibility for this new situation you're in now. For better or for worse, Australia is less white than it was. Listen, for better or for worse, Australia is less white than it was in the past, and that is irreversible. Unless you can explain to me strategically, how can it be reversed?
We could send them back. Why is it irreversible?
How will you send them back? Go ahead. Now, I'm talking in the real world. I'm not talking about hypothetically. In the real world, how are you going to have it so all the non-white people will be sent back? How will that happen?
If white people are unified around our racial consciousness and our collective interests,
Square one, you fucked up.
We attain political power.
Step one, you fucked up.
We can send them back.
But Joel, 50% of white people, let's say, this is like in America, but I'm pulling out of my ass. Let's say it's 30% in Australia. At least 30%, around 50% of white people in Australia, they belong to a different class, and it's in their class interest to keep the status quo going. They're part of the professional managerials. They are the people like the Gen Z boss in a mini, that kind of video you saw. That's white people, all right? They're also the people who are liberals. They're also the people who are pro-globalist, okay? The people who support Ukraine and Taiwan and all this nonsense, like Drew Pavlou, that's white people. So white people are divided. How do you address that division among white people on class lines if you want to unite them?
Because the division between white people is not primarily about class. It's white people are divided more.
Really?
Yeah.
You're saying that the urbanoid Australians that don't work real jobs with their hands but sit on computer desks are literally like, that is demographically the same type of person as the actual Australians in the outback, like mining and shit? You think these are you think this is not a fundamental division there? You think, for that matter, since this applies to the world, that flyover states where MAGA is the same as white coastal elites in New York and LA who are hipsters
Obviously,
and whatever?
The major
You don't think these divisions are fundamental? You don't think these are fundamental class divisions? Moreover, even if you don't want to recognize the PMC stuff, you don't think there's a class division between these Anglo-American financial capitalists and the Australians that are oil drilling and fucking mining and shit and building and construction? You don't think there's a class difference there that divides them fundamentally in terms of what their real interests are? Really? Really, Joel?
The principle of racial loyalty for pretty much all white people, if applied, would massively benefit their life and massively benefit the society they live in. If society was organized,
how are you going to convince them?
Good for white Australia in general.
How are you going to unite the white race?
Prior to the breakdown of what the original Australian state had set up, in Australia we had a nationalized banking system where there was no like private banks issuing mortgages. We had a
your central bank was created by the British Empire. What are you talking about?
We had a state-run bank that issued.
It wasn't state.
How was loans, mortgages to the people?
How was it state-run? It wasn't state-run. There was a time
under which, when we had racialists running the government, where it was actually run for the interests of the white Australian nation in general. They built up industry. We had incredible prosperity.
You're saying some nonsense right now. Australia has never had a state bank. Your bank was always private, okay?
You don't know the history of my country?
I do know. Your bank was set up by the British Empire, okay? First of all, which has always controlled listen. This is the truth.
Simple as that.
This is the truth. There's no need to romanticize the heyday of the.
You don't know the history. You don't know the history of my country. That's fine.
I know enough about Australia's. Joel, you think I give a shit about Australia? I know these things about Australia.
You're the history of my country, and now you're saying you don't give a shit about it. Why argue with me about it?
Because you wanted to. You wanted to debate me, and the Groypers appointed you as their representative to debate me. So this is what we're going to talk about. I did not. I would not have seen your tweet had they not boosted it. And by the way, I gracefully accepted this, even though I debated you twice before, just to make an example for the people who boosted you. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Australia's bank was set up by the British Empire, who has always controlled Australia's finances for foreign monopoly rent. There were concessions won by the Labour Party. There were crumbs, so to speak, that they were able to exact. But in the long term, because they never actually owned Australia's means of production and mines and fundamental land and all that stuff.
This is why I'm not a liberal, Haas. This is why I'm.
But
an
here's you're not
authoritarian.
understanding why Marxism is necessary. Because if you don't have a fundamental understanding of the laws of the development of nations in history rooted in class struggle, if you don't understand the fundamental conflict that propels why nations go in the directions that they are, why politics is structured in the way that it is, you are not going to be able to maintain the sovereignty of your people. That is why Marxism is the most popular and the most effective in national liberation movements that are fighting against foreign invaders and colonialists.